Doubt kills more dreams than failure ever will. I feel as if many shows, many films, many forms of general media in fact, and stories hundreds of years past have always tried to get this message across. The fantasy genre is no stranger to this fact, and neither is the medieval genre for that matter. But with Lord of the Rings being only one of a few noteworthy medieval fantasies that spring to mind from recent decades even, it demonstrates the state of the genre even though anime has become so popular within Western culture in recent years. I would say this is the case and would continue to be so if not for the anime that we will be discussing today, and an anime that I think will define 2026, being Frieren Beyond Journey's End. Frieren, for anyone who does not know, is a story of an elf's life after slaying the Demon King, and how she spends her time wisely after the death of all her comrades as she outlives all of them. Even that description does very little justice to even the first episode of this show, however, so I would recommend watching this show before watching this video. Also, if you like the content, I'd appreciate comments, likes, subscribes. It always helps the channel grow and helps me get my videos out to more people. When looking into Frieren, I wanted to do something I haven't actually seen other creators do yet, and talk about the writer of the series, Kanehito Yamada. I've most likely got their name wrong, but more to the point, I looked into Yamada's work before this to see if there was anything I was even familiar with, and to my surprise, both manga I had never actually heard of. I also don't want to try pronouncing them because they're even harder than her name, so no thanks. What I'm trying to say is, after seeing how slim her catalogue was, as well as the 7-year time frame between her first manga and Frieren, it makes me think how that line likely relates to her as much as it does Frieren. Doubt kills dreams more than failure ever will. It's a sentiment that rings through most of us, I would bet, and this idea is so well crafted into each minute of every episode of Frieren. Though only seen through flashbacks, Frieren's first journey is shown to be one that she only goes along with because of the insistence of Himmel. It is that doubt of being an elf outside of the wizarding world that drives her away from this adventure. And what it displays is even a character as far-fetched and distant as Frieren can still suffer the same doubts as people within their daily lives. And even with 100 times a lifespan, she still stems from the same issues that we do. And this is part of what makes this anime so special in comparison to a lot of the fantasy genre. I think a massive issue with anime within the fantasy genre and in the medieval genre is that the characters almost don't feel real, they don't feel relatable. Frieren illustrates that the doubt will always be there, no matter how long you wait until you overcome that first obstacle. The excuses will always be there to follow the doubt. However, it's your job to look inwards at why you have that opportunity and if it is truly right for you. Another character who I think displays this incredibly well on the show is Sign, and I would argue he actually acts as the best example of this, in fact, letting his best friend go on an adventure without him at first, only catching up after letting go of his comfortable life he once had. Whether about family, one's own ability, or for any other reason imaginable, doubt is a cruel yet necessary emotion that is tied to each and every one of us, and it is so well shown within Frieren and each one of their main protagonists that I think it becomes much more human as a show compared to the likes of JJK and Fire Force. It's not to say that those shows are bad, I think those shows are both amazing actually, but it's just a trait of Frieren's that is so good that I think that's why, even though it is a fantasy anime, it is doing as well as the previous stated shows. And Frieren as a show brings the fantasy genre almost back to reality by making everything that defines the fantasy genre just feel normal, just feel like it's part of the world that she lives within. I think this is a big issue that comes with isekai more than just fantasy, but when you are introduced to a fantasy world, and often through isekai, the power system or the power elements within the show in general often take command of the entire show, and normally it becomes about the main character and their power, and the power system that follows their power. Frieren is one of the strongest people we have seen in the actual show, but it's not about that. And the fantasy and medieval genres in general through anime have always struggled to stand out in comparison to the likes of shonen, because shows like Jujutsu Kaisen and Chainsaw Man continue their monstrous rise in popularity. Yet Frieren stands on the same level. Its ratings matching Full Metal Alchemist Brotherhood when releasing display its exceptional storytelling abilities through each episode. Every episode within the first season feels as if it's its own story, and these stories have incredible importance not just to the characters within that episode, but the narrative as a whole. This can also only be achieved because of the transition from manga to anime being so smooth. Many anime, when they get adapted from manga, and they have the cut-offs between episodes, feel almost janky. It feels like it's not put in place correctly, and there's just cuts between arcs that feel almost jittery to a point. And this can cause issues with story arcs feeling far too long or far too short because the 25-minute episode format doesn't fit the original mangaka's vision. But to the credit of the director, Kichiro Saito, Season 1 tackled this issue perfectly. We're given ample time for even characters later on in the season, such as Ubel, to understand their motives and traits, even in a restricted episodic format. And this promise displayed from the first season leaves little to worry about in my expectations of the second. Frieren has kind of proven on multiple occasions that it can switch its narrative tones from sentimental to comedic to action-packed adventure, all while keeping me engaged throughout each arc. I think a show like Fire Force could definitely learn from this and keep consistency in how much it engages an audience. Shonen as a whole often requires amazing animation and fight sequences in order to activate the monkey brain anime watcher, often because it lacks actual depth within its story. Chainsaw Man and Jujutsu Kaisen have managed to bridge that gap between the action-packed fights and the emotion. It's becoming a blueprint for other shonens in how to achieve that, but it's not always the case. But when a show like Frieren can offer both, there is really no doubt how this second season will compete with those two shows and will define 2026. With it coming out at the same time as Jujutsu Kaisen, it's a really tough run-in for this show, and we'll have to see if it can keep up with its previous season now, as well as its competitors around it. I haven't even touched on Hell's Paradise, coming out at the same time as Frieren and Jujutsu Kaisen. That could be another big factor for where the anime fanbase actually goes. The second season of this show is almost guaranteed to be amazing, but it's going to really need to stand out in between those two shonen animes that will get a lot of hype to really become a show that is talked about years after its release. Season 1 has already received so much plaudits, so I think it's very likely that Season 2 will as well. But I wouldn't say it's as short hit as something like Jujutsu Kaisen. Jujutsu Kaisen is so loved, not just for its anime, but also for its manga and for Gege and for so many other things that come with the show. Whereas Frieren just has its first season at the moment, and really the second season is likely to be pretty much the rest of the manga. Looking onwards from the second season, there actually probably won't be a third season for a long time, because I believe the second season will be taking up the majority of what's been covered in the manga. A big sticking point for Frieren past this point will be if people will remember it before a third season actually happens. And that's why the second season of Frieren really has to hit. There is no second chances within the start of 2026. With the amount of great anime that are coming out, people will forget about you if you do not start strong. And equally, with how long it will take Season 3 to likely come out, it has to be a show that not only has the impact in the beginning, but the longevity after the show is finished, so that people come back and rewatch it for when the third season arrives. But I do think Frieren can achieve this. I think the team around it and those who have made the anime from the first season are incredible, and I think it will be one of the best anime to come out of 2026. Thank you for watching. This was kind of a mix of a review of Season 1 and for what's going on for Season 2. I kind of want to do a little bit of both, only because it's been a long time since Season 1 came out now, and Season 2, I haven't got spoilers on it, so I didn't want to dig too deep into that and ruin the show for myself, / kind of ruin it for other people. So I decided to just kind of do 2 videos in one, rather than splitting the videos up like I originally intended. It just feels like the easier way to go about things without spoiling everything. I really appreciate the support recently. The Fire Force video did incredibly well, and I was shocked when I came back and just saw how amazing that was doing. So thank you so much. It really means a lot to me. I only actually originally did this to practice my editing YouTube videos. That was the only reason. But seeing the reception is such a nice feeling, and it makes me want to keep making these videos while doing so much work at university. Getting the time to do it is quite difficult, but I really appreciate all the support. Make sure to like, comment and subscribe, all that stuff, and thank you for watching. I hope to see you next one.